all familiarised yourself with that since this morning, and just to remind everybody, this meeting, like all of the meetings of the Fire Authority, are recorded. So I will ask now the monitoring officer. I think we'll do another roll call to assist Democratic Services, because some have dropped off between since this morning. So over to the monitoring officer in that regard.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think it's wise to do this because we can now identify who's still with us for the clarification, not only for anybody who might be listening in or whatever, but also for any IT issues that may arise. So I'll start without further ado, Chair, with yourself, Councillor John Davis.
Yeah, President.
Thank you. We already had apologies from Councillor Carl Jordan. I don't think he's joined. No. Councillor Andrew Williams.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Elwyn Williams.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor David Bryan.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Dan Thomas. Councillor Dan Thomas. Okay. Councillor Edwin Roderick.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Kim Rubin.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Tina Higgins.
Emma, diolch.
Thank you. Councillor Gareth Lloyd. Thank you. Councillor Patience Bento.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Emlyn Shavoni.
Dwi'n prynawn da presennol, rhaid fi gadael cyn lle diwedd y prynawn os ydyn ni'n lan yn dweud.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Tierney.
Joshua Hyde. Oh, Mark Tierney.
Well, whoever put this list together, I got it on the notice. Set for that. Right. Okay, thank you.
Josh was with us this morning. Can't see you now.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Matt Crowley.
Online from a cloudy Aberafan, Dave.
Perish the thought that it's ever cloudy in Port Talbot. Right. Councillor Gordon Walker. Thank you. Councillor Victoria Holland.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Sarah Williams. Councillor Williams.
With us this morning.
Not with us this morning either. Councillor Sam Bennett. No. Councillor Gwynby Evans.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Sharon Freegard.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Lyndon Jones.
Yes, you have apologies from Councillor Jones.
He's definitely gone. Okay, thank you. Councillor Glyn Preston. No.
Councillor Vaughan.
All right, sorry, yeah.
Let's move
Okay.
on.
Councillor Sam Pritchard. No. And last but not least, Councillor Hugh Shepherdson, I think, has sent apologies online.
Yes, he has.
Yes.
And we've also got a Councillor Winborn from Province instead.
Elwyn.
They've forgotten about me already.
Did they not call you? All right, Councillor Gwynfor Thomas.
No, I know.
Thank you. If I can very briefly do the officers then, if I call everyone. Yes, sorry about that, Councillor Vaughan.
Dave, sorry to interrupt you there. So we've had apologies from Councillor Joshua Bynum,
Okay.
and Cara Jordan has now joined us online.
Ah, right. Okay. So, Councillor Jordan, welcome. Wherever you
Oh, yeah,
be.
right in at the bottom.
There we are. Thank you very much.
Do it.
Thank you. We can very briefly do the officers. Myself, Dave Daycock, Clerk and Monitoring Officer. To my left, Chief Fire Officer Roger Thomas. Thank you. Deputy Chief Fire Officer Ewan Cray. Now I hope I get a title right. Sarah Manbridge, Section 151 Officer and Treasurer.
Present. Thank you.
Thank you. Assistant Chief Fire Officer Craig Flannery.
Present.
Assistant Chief Officer Midrian Harris. Thank you. Area Manager Justin Lewis. No.
No.
No. Peter Greenslade.
No.
Area Manager Gavin Thomas. No. Area Manager Sean Lloyd. Henry. No. Right. Corporate Head of Human Resources, the Centre of Apologies, Kerry Jackson. Head of Finance, Stephen Phillips.
Now and presennol.
Thank you. Arrived for the afternoon, Head of HR, Mark Miles.
Present.
Thank you. Alan Lewis, Head of Corporate Communications and Business Development. Brave.
Present.
Thank you. And Harold Hawkes, Democratic Services Officer. And I think, is that everyone? Yeah. Right, that's great. Thank you, Chair. That's the roll call.
So apologies for that.
Oh, sorry, was somebody missing?
No, Lisa could control the.
Ah, right, well, the Chair.
Which I will welcome her note shortly, as I said earlier. Right, apologies for absence. Those have been noted. No further to add.
No, Chair.
No, okay. So we move on to item 2, declarations by members of any personal prejudicial interest. And clearly, it is the long-standing conflict of interest as far as constituent authorities, I take it, and nothing else.
Well, it is a bit more, sorry, Chair.
Well then,
Firstly, can you all declare the standing interest in relation to anything relating to or affecting your constituent authorities?
so move.
Are you all happy to agree with that? And I would also suggest that the unaudited statement of accounts do affect or relate to, in particular, your personal allowances. It's only a personal interest; it doesn't prejudice you in any way. So, if members could agree that, please.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And lastly, in relation to item 7, which is an update from service legal advisors in relation to, I think, primarily a complainant against the authority. Myself, the Chief Fire Officer, and the Section 151 officer, and I understand it, both the Chair and the Deputy Chair have been the subject of a complaint, but there is no, former Chair. But as there is no decision being made, in my view, it's only sufficient that a personal interest is declared. There's no necessity for the members or indeed the officers to leave the room. So if we can agree that.
All noted by everybody?
Yeah.
Thank
You
you.
come out.
I think that's it, Chair.
Thank you very much, which moves on nicely to Chair's announcements and personal matters. Nothing further to add since this morning. Other than I have a reminder here from Aled to collect tablets from IT and set up an appointment to create an email address if not done so already. Does that suggest that we all get tablets?
Yes, they will be coming to post dates, presentations up.
Okay, so we're to ask to stay around for that as well, yeah?
Yeah, it'll just literally be handed on tablet.
Okay, fine, thank you. Great, well, thank you for that clarity. That deals with that. Let's move on then to the first substantive issue, which is the annual governance statement for 24-25, which is the usual part of annual business.
Sorry, Chair, can I ask you, are you going to formally welcome Lisa?
I was going to do that when we went to private session, but I welcome you in that regard now, Lisa, and we'll have more to say later on.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Moving on then to the annual governance statement 4. Over to the monitoring officer.
Thank you, Chair. It falls to me to take you through the annual governance statement, which again you are presumably or hopefully familiar with from previous years on the Fire Authority. But for new members, I will briefly address the issues arising from it. Basically, the annual governance statement is, as its name suggests, a document that testifies to the fitness for purpose, if you like, of the governance systems of the Fire Authority itself. And that in itself is based upon the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, CIPA, their guidance and their advice relating to delivering good governance in local government framework back in 2016, and also builds upon the Code of Corporate Governance that you may have come across if you were on, I think it was on the past committee the other day where I took members through that. But again, you'll be familiar with from previous years, which again, as its name suggests, sets out the way in which the Fire Authority is governed and hopefully demonstrates openness and accountability and good governance systems employed by the authority. So the whole thing hopefully comes together in the Code of Annual Governance Statement, and that itself then links to the formal Statement of Accounts. And there is a formal requirement, Chair, that yourself and the Chief Fire Officer sign the Annual Governance Statement at the end of the meeting, which then flows through to the Statement of Accounts, which again can be a testament, if you like, to the good governance or the demonstration of good governance within the Fire Authority itself. So very briefly, to take you through some of the key points there. As I said, the Code of Corporate Governance builds on the way in which the authority is governed. That was fed through the bottom of page 7 there to the Performance Audit and Scrutiny Committee back in May, and is there to demonstrate as far as reasonably can be done that we have effective systems and processes and indeed culture in terms of good governance within the fire authority itself. Nothing is foolproof. You cannot, just by writing something down, guarantee that it is the case, but hopefully doing so in this way will give some measure of confidence, not least to Audit Wales and the Welsh Government and indeed the public of Mid and West Wales, that the fire authority is being run in an effective and open and transparent way itself. And that's built upon in a number of ways as well. You turn over on page 8 there's a strong link to the Community Risk Management Plan, which again you hear that at length from the Deputy Chief Officer in previous meetings, and where there's extensive consultation with the public on the way in which the authority not only is run, but it's moving forward and hopefully tailoring itself to be fit for its purpose there. But also, against it, we have quarterly monitoring reports to the Performance Audit and Scrutiny Committee to give members assurance as to the way in which the actual fire authority itself is governed. So hopefully there's a network of systems in place which does demonstrate that the fire authority is being governed correctly by yourselves, and that there are effective frameworks and effective systems in place to try to demonstrate that as far as humanly possible. On page 9 is again, very briefly, the Regulation 5.2 of the Audit and Accounts Wales Regulations 2014 actually requires a review of the systems that we have. So it's not just good practice, it is actually a legal requirement. And as I've said earlier on, it builds upon CIFR's initiatives in relation to delivering good governance in local authorities and local authority frameworks. So, just a top and tail the matter, item 9, fire authority governance implications. Normally, this report will be taken to the Performance Audit and Scrutiny Committee, but due to time pressures, and unfortunately, we seem to be having those more and more these days, it's been felt appropriate to just take this straight to the fire authority, straight to the Senate, so that you can be satisfied of the good governance systems within the fire authority itself. And as I've said again earlier on, it's for the chair and the chief fire officer to, if they're satisfied with the effectiveness of the systems in place, to sign it off at the end of the meeting itself then. So really that's the sort of broad background for the annual governance statement. Hopefully without further ado, I will take you very briefly through the annual governance statement itself. It starts on page 11 of your documents that are in front of you. And what I intend to do is go through the various articles, if you like, of the Code of Corporate Governance itself, and then hopefully at the end of that, the various principles of the Code of Governance itself. At the end of that, I'll stop and either invite comments from the relevant officers themselves, or ask yourselves whether you've got any questions, either of myself or perhaps better to the individual officers around the table then. So hopefully without further ado, if I can refer you to page 17, where we've got the various principles set out in the Code of Corporate Governance itself, which are then transformed or addressed in the Code of Corporate Governance itself to, as I say, hopefully meld together that you've got this document embodying good governance and demonstrating good governance within the fire authority itself. And the first principle that comes from the Code of Corporate Governance, and it's built into the annual governance statement itself, is principle A, to ensure, as far as we can, that the authority behaves with integrity, demonstrates a strong commitment to ethical values, and respects the rule of law. So these things you might think are self-evident, but nevertheless, I think a good authority will acknowledge that and try and demonstrate in paper and in its actions the way in which those principles are delivered. Firstly, I've already mentioned the Community Risk Management Plan itself is permeated by the concept of accountability and dealing with the public. I won't go through that in any great depth. You are hopefully familiar from previous input from the Deputy Chief Fire Officer, but it is a long road to be undertaken. It will be extensive consultation with the local communities from whatever part of the fire service, the fire authority area that you're from. And as yet, it's perhaps a bit too soon to say where that's going to take the fire service and the fire authority. But nevertheless, at every step of the way, there will be openness, integrity, and hopefully ethical values permeating that particular process itself. You've heard a lot from the Chief Fire Officer in relation to the cultural journey there. At the bottom of the page there, the matter was considered by the Welsh Government, and in particular Hannah Blythen, Deputy Minister. And I think there were good practices within the fire service and the fire authority itself, but she felt that there was need for more to be demonstrated and more further in-depth analysis of what's going on and scrutiny of what's going on, and that then triggered an independent review of each fire and rescue service's cultural journey. Again, you're familiar with that, and I may call the chief in a minute just to briefly top and tail it, but I can see by the way you're looking at me, you might not be too keen to do that. But again, you are familiar with it. But the important key point is set over the page there. We called in an external advisors, Crest Advisory. They did a report that was sent to all members. You had a look at that. You are familiar with that. And again, was some of it recognised good practice within the fire authority. There were issues that were raised, and that now takes us on to the next step of the cultural journey and the awareness of the cultural journey that we need to have, which is the formation of a cultural change team and the appointment of further specialists. And looking at the chief here, have we actually got to the appointment stage yet, Roger, or are we still on that?
No, as I said this morning, we've gone through one procurement process which did not yield any potential suppliers. So we've gone to another framework. As I said, we have three individuals who pitched in basically what they can provide, and we had that process last week. And tomorrow now we'll be hopefully appointing one of those, the strongest one. Essentially is what we want. We want somebody who can really take us forward with this. We have an action plan based on our own internal audit, which included and published in September 2023. We have the recommendations coming out of the Crest Advisory Review, plus anything we've picked up, like I say, from external reports. And we will work and deliver those recommendations. That is our pledge. We have an internal team appointed. That is solely what they will work on. We'll take some resource, excuse me, but it is number one objective within the community risk management plan. And it is one of our main priorities moving forward. So you have my assurances that we are investing in this, and we will continue to. I suspect it isn't a job and finish. It's not something you get to the end of. Improvements in culture will always be something we will aspire to. I don't like the phrase, but it's a journey. You hear that so many times out there, but it is something we will embark on. We will embark on together, and we will obviously report progress as we see fit back into authority as a group.
Thank you for that, Roger. It's important to have an up-to-date analysis of where the cultural journey is. And I'm sure members may ask questions at the end of this particular section, but I thought I'd call Roger in that particular stage, Chair. Over the page there on page 19, they've also set up the service's internal culture inclusion working group to look at the areas identified on page 19 there, and also a professional standards board again as well, looking at the standards of behaviour of staff within the fire authority, in particular the standards of behaviour and actual conduct itself, which is recorded in accordance with the disciplinary grievance resolution procedures as well that already exists within the fire service. An interesting one there is at the bottom line, the independent reporting line, linking up really with the concept of the speak up system in relation to Crime Stoppers, where again individual members of the authority of the employees of the authority can raise issues which need to be investigated. And again, sometimes they're just general broad sort of complaints, other times they're specific, and they will be investigated fully as appropriate. We've also signed up as well to Fire Standards Code of Ethics, and we've also got a full staff appraisal process as well, which is ongoing, again, to look at the behaviour of staff within the authority itself and appraise them to make sure that they're in kilter with the ethical and property journey that the authority and the service is undertaking, and again linking to the staff induction process. Code of conduct, well, I won't go on about that. I'll talk about that later on when I hopefully do the briefing to you on code of conduct issues for members and officers. The good news is that there are very, very few complaints about the probity and conduct of members on the fire authority. I think we had one last year, which was very, very rare. But again, the system is in place. I like to think we've got a very good, capable standards committee who guardians, if you like, the property within the authority of members in particular, and that is dealt with by the standards committee itself. Last couple of points, Chair. Obviously, the constitution itself, that hopefully in a documentary form enables you and demonstrates that we do approach decision making in the correct way, but nothing is ever written in tablets of stone. We're going to look at it again. We've had a review last year, just set out there, but we're going to look at it again in the summer. I think myself, Aled and Harrod will be driving that forward to make sure it's fit for purpose. And again, we'll liaise with the Democratic Services to ensure that members are fully involved in that particular process as well. And at the bottom of the page is the role, if you like, of myself and the Section 151 officer to make sure that your financial probity is safeguarded and your legal probity is safeguarded as well. And our job is independent of the service. It's for us to call out if we feel that there is impropriety taking place, and we bring that to your attention for you to be fully appraised of that rather than letting things slip. So hopefully you've got that comfort in terms of independent officers then briefing you on those particular issues. And again, finally, over on page 22, there's a raft of other policies which guarantee probity and good decision making, not least the authority's anti-fraud and anti-corruption policy. And we've also got a procurement strategy dealing with the way in which we get and obtain services for the authority itself there. So that really deals with key principles set out under Principle A. I'm happy to stop briefly there if you want me to do so, Chair, and field any questions on any of the issues that I've raised.
Thank you. Thank you, Monitoring Officer. I want to come back, and I know it would be the wish of collective view of the authority in regards to the cultural journey and the update from Chief Fire Officer and just now as well. Come September, when we next meet as a full authority, a lot of water would have flown under the bridge as part of this journey. I think it will be helpful and useful and reassuring as well for members, being that the seat of ownership has to be held by the Fire Authority in the first instance, as far as scrutiny and good governance. If we can have a presentation at the end of that meeting that clearly states where we are, and by then you will have hopefully appointed contractors, consultants, whatever you want to call them, but also highlighting what steps have been taken already. So we will know, but some members in this room will not know regarding how members have oversight of appointments, promotion processes and everything. Because what is patently clear is that there is a political expectation, a public expectation, and professional expectation that the authority have ownership of this journey. So I ask of senior officers to give that assurance this afternoon that we'll have a very detailed presentation in our September authority, which is a few months away, on where we are and actually plotting out the timelines for the next 12 months as well. Because we all need goals to work to, don't we? And I think it's expected of us. So I'll leave it there for a minute. If you want to come back, I'll ask you a minute. Sharon Freegard, do you want to come in, Councillor Sharon?
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yeah. I just got a few questions on the statement of governance. So on my document, it's page 36 and 42. So on page 46, where it's got about the level of assurance, I just wanted some clarity on the timeline there, where we've got high to low, low to high. What were the dates that those assessments took place. Did we end on a high? If not, what were the dates of those? And have we got a date for a revisit? Because you do mention the revisit. And I'm assuming that the 5 recommendations were given to the audit committee and the comments are based on that. I've got other questions on page 42, but I don't know whether you want to answer that first.
What would you deal with that now? We're coming on to that.
Yeah, I prefer to deal with it and we come on to it, Councillor Figard. It
Right,
gets a bit
okay.
confusing if we leap
Right,
about.
that's fine.
It'll happen shortly, Councillor Sharon. That's
That's
on
fine.
the list to do. Do you want to come back then, officers, on what I said earlier?
Absolutely. I think it's an excellent suggestion. I think clearly as in your role as audit and scrutiny of the work that goes on within the service, more than happy to bring forward. By that point, by the 22nd of September, we will have, well, very hopeful we've done that tomorrow, to appoint somebody who will start on the 1st of July. So we will have, 8 to 10 weeks of action in terms of moving things on. A lot of things have happened, and I think if we can condense those into a single presentation to say, this is what we moved on, this is the action plan, these are the recommendations, and these are the things we focus on. And whilst we recognise as well, managing and measuring culture is a difficult thing. This is an abstract concept in lots of ways, but we'll do our best to show where we can measure things and show progress in that area as well. Plus, I think it would be appropriate for us to say where we find challenge as well. It's not all about the good news and the things you've done. We want to be open and honest and transparent as we always are, and to show that actually this is a real difficult nut to crack. Things that will be difficult. And it's not only about doing the low-hanging fruit, it's about the more challenging bits as well. We have a dedicated team now, that is their role. And it's a lot easier when you've got people who are perhaps not dipping in and out in a volunteer capacity. We have now a dedicated team, and hopefully by tomorrow, a dedicated appointed specialist who is, well versed in this work and will have done this type of thing in other organisations as well. So we welcome the opportunity to bring that forward.
Yeah, I'm not taking away from the remit of past to monitor and scrutinise, but I think it needs to be at this stage now, as we enter the next stage and chapter, it needs to be owned by the full block. That's the thinking behind it. Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions, anybody at this point? There will be further opportunities in a minute. Okay, we move on then. Monitoring officer.
Thank you very much, Chair. Moving on to Principle B, again, a commitment to ensuring openness and comprehensive stakeholder engagement. Many strands to that. The not least is that all of our public documents are in the public domain and can be scrutinised, obviously, not only by yourselves as members, but also by members of the public itself. However, we've got to be mindful of such things as data protection and freedom of information, the balance that has to be struck in those contexts, because the last thing we want is to put in things in the public domain that shouldn't be there. And sometimes, for right or wrong, it's required that we have briefings or whatever, even reports, which are held in camera. So there is a line to be drawn between the two, but hopefully we err on the side of openness and inclusivity. And a lot of good work has been done by not least Alidon and Harry in getting everything online with the development of a new website for the authority and also for the public documents of the authority itself, there, which is, as it's stated there, a significant piece of work for the ICT department. And again, it's not a job that's finished, it's something that's ongoing. We've obviously got to try to keep up with new technology, as I refer to it, to make sure that we are ahead of the game in terms of openness and inclusivity in that context. And again, I've already mentioned the community risk management plan there, which is a significant piece of work for the authority itself, which is underpinned and underscored really by consultation with the communities that we serve. And again, hopefully that process, which is a dialogue, which does try to get the local communities embedded in the decision-making processes and having their views fully articulated before officers and ultimately members. That is the journey that we set out on, and you get full briefings on that, as I said, from the Deputy Chief Fire Officer. A total of 34 community engagement drop-in sessions. So it's something that is really being taken seriously by the relevant officers within the service itself. Moving on, reviewing our internal governance as well. That has changed as well. We've now got a fully electronic system for clearing reports, so highlighting issues that are coming forward in reports, and it linked to and is underpinned by a system called MAWW, which is again bringing us in kilter with what is already hopefully taking place in your own authorities, your own constituent authorities. I've already mentioned corporate budget planning, which hopefully gives yourselves a full citing of financial issues relating to the authority itself. I already mentioned when we talked about representation yesterday, or earlier on today, on page 26, the role of public service boards, and also the requirement, a legal requirement, in the Social Partnership and Public Procurement Wales Act for an annual report identifying how we have, as an authority, engaged with social partnerships, and there's a key role there recognising trade unions within that process. And whilst there have been some issues in the past, I think hopefully we are now moving on in a more positive vein in terms of that. I mean, for the last meetings we had with him, we actually signed up to the social partnership duty requirements themselves. So really, we like to think that members of the public, members themselves, are fully cited on what's going on. If there are any issues, as I've said previously, feel free to bring them up either directly or through the Democratic Services program itself. But we'd like to think that we can sign up to this as part of the annual governance statement. But I'm more than happy to take any questions on the issue of openness and comprehensive stakeholder engagement.
Any questions? If not, we'll move on and we can have them on at the end. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on, Principle C, very important in this day and age now to addressing issues of sustainability, not only in terms of economic sustainability, but social and environmental benefits that will flow from going down that particular road as part of our journey as well. And again, all of the reports that you get now flag up specifically engagement with the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act to show that we are buying into that as a set of aspirations for the authority. And again, the community risk management plan is again intertwined and embodies, if you like, the aspirations of the Future Generations Wales Act. Likewise, capital investment, something that Sarah may want to come in on, I don't know, but certainly as far as I'm aware, the capital investment of the authority is done not only in an economically effective way, pardon me, but also in a social and environmentally and sustainably conscious way, as well, as far as it's possible to balance all of those effectively, and that's what's done by the authority in its relevant policies and procedures. We've also got an environmental strategy and carbon reduction roadmap. Again, that's built into the CRMP, and in particular the commitment to the environment itself, and reductions, for example, in things such as greenhouse gas emissions. And again, we've got officers around the table here who can actually probably tell you far more effectively than I the good steps that have been taken to try to deliver that. But rest assured that the authority is mindful of its obligations in that context, and that we are working towards delivering that at all appropriate junctures. So unless I can add any more there, Chair, I'm more than happy to take questions, or as you say, leave them for the questions at the end.
I think you can carry on if we can't see no hands.
Okay, thank you. Principle D, slightly enigmatic title there, determining the interventions necessary to optimise the achievement of intended outcomes. This is what I would have said was classical management speak back in the day, but no doubt it means a lot more to some people than others. But I think it's basically scrutinising what's going on to make sure that it is delivering what the intended outcomes are going to be. And I like to think again, we really like to think as officers that we do submit the activities of the service in particular, but also the authority to scrutiny. We've been through that in Principle A, the openness and accountability of the authority's decision making schemes. but also under the scheme of standing orders that members can ask questions and probe effectively the decision-making processes and the performance of officers within the authority. Just to reiterate the point I've made again in the past, if members do have questions and queries about issues, it's far more beneficial that you raise them before the meeting so that officers can then prepare for it, rather than necessarily one of the word ambushing officers and say, what about this, what about that? Because invariably it means officers will have to go and get the information together to probably either give to you in writing or at the next committee. But nevertheless, it's entirely right and proper that you can ask questions, and sometimes you can't preempt them. They will come to you as a matter is dealt with. But certainly openness and transparency are permeating the decision-making process of the authority, and hopefully you feel that there are plenty of opportunities to intervene to try to hold individuals or entities to account within the services decisions and management processes. As I said, monitoring reports is done on a regular basis. They are fed through to the Performance Audit and Scrutiny Committee on a quarterly basis. And again, from external standpoints, you've got compliance certificates from Audit Wales in relation to the performance of the authority in those contexts then. So really, hopefully, members are comfortable in the means in which they can hold officers and other individuals to account. But if there is felt to be some detriment there, again, that can be raised with the Democratic Services Forum and appropriate steps can be taken. But the Code of Corporate Governance here and the audit governance statement is guaranteeing or giving steps to assure that there is openness and scrutiny of those particular provisions. I can add any more, Chair, otherwise I'll move on to Principle E.
Yes, please.
Thank you. And again, developing this concept of the entity's capacity and the capability of its leadership and individuals within it. Obviously, this has been a considerable searchlight recently by virtue of the issues of accountability of senior management in other authorities, and not least South Wales Fire, where they've had commissioners being brought in there. You're no doubt aware within the Fire Authority itself, we have the Chief Fire Officer is held to account directly by the Chief Officer's Remuneration Committee as to his performance during the year, and hopefully feedback we certainly get from members is that members are satisfied with that. But certainly there are systems in place in order to hold the Chief Fire Officer, and by extension his management team, to account for that. But also on a more direct level, you also have management of staff within the Fire Authority itself. And again, at a very sensible level, it also looks at the biennial fitness tests to undertaken to make sure that firefighters are fit in order to discharge their duties there. But it is wider than that as well. We also look at the training and development of the attitudes within the fire service itself, and we also look at the recruitment process to make sure that the raw material, if you like, that's coming through is of sufficient caliber in order to discharge the duties of the service itself. And again, as part of that process, there is an exit interview process as well. So when firefighters leave, you get feedback as to the performance and way in which they've perceived the authority. And I've already mentioned the speak up process and the whistleblowing processes that we have in order to flag up any issues that could be felt to be of problematic in terms of the service itself. We're also looking at a training and development review, looking at the whole level of training and development within the authority itself. And again, I think you heard from the Chief Fire Officer earlier on, there may be difficulties in recruiting in certain areas or in certain types of staff, but now steps are being taken to try to address any of those issues, which will make sure that the service will be fit for purpose in years to come. So again, I'm happy to take any questions on that or move on if you wish, Chair.
You can move on to Principle G.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And then the last principle there, which I think is Principle F, where you have managing risk and performance with robust internal control and strong financial management. Again, those of you on the performance, the past committee will get regular reports about risk management. The Deputy Chief Fire Officer has sort of used that as a specific area that he is fully familiar and taking responsibility for, and you get regular reports as to the risk management policy of the authority. You cannot manage risk out. It's impossible to do that. But what you can do, what a responsible management system will do, is that it will identify risks, and then informed decisions will be made as to whether to embark on the risk strategy or to embark on the possibility of engaging with the risk or to do something else to mitigate it. So the risk management policy is something that you're all familiar with and which is addressed in regular reports to the Performance and Audit Scrutiny Committee, and also that again you're aware of the Services Business Risk Register, where you can look various issues up, you can see how they've been rated, you can see what steps have been recommended to try to mitigate or to remove or manage the risks, and hopefully that will give members then confidence that, all right, if there are risks, they are at least identified and reasonable steps are taken to try to manage them as effectively as possible. And that's not only in terms of financial risk, in terms of physical risks and matters of that nature, but also in relation to possible financial risks that may come the way of the authority, where again, robust processes are in place, not least identified on page 33 there, financial planning in the medium term there with the services medium financial strategy, where financial risks are evaluated and they are reported as best can be to members. Not helped, I would say, by sometimes the Welsh Government not necessarily making decisions as early as possible as they could, and then not giving enough time to Sarah and her team in order to be able to react. But she does a really good job in trying to manage that process. Sometimes you may need to move meetings in order to facilitate it, but again, members are involved fully in the processes so that really, as far as possible, financial risks are addressed and mitigated. Want to come into that, Sarah, or have I said enough on that issue?
No, I'll give my update in the next item, agenda.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And then, if you're happy, Chair, for me to just top and tail down on principle G, implementing good practices in transparency and reporting and auditing to deliver effective accountability. Well, in a nutshell, this is what this document is all about, isn't it? It's actually pulling all of this together to give you confidence that there is transparency in the decision-making processes here, that officers are discharging their duties effectively, and that they report these things to you, and that standing over it, I'll come on to that very briefly in a minute, you have effective auditing systems to look in and say, yes, this is being done correctly or in a reasonable way. So the Code of Corporate Governance, the annual governance statement, all coming together to hopefully give confidence that Principle G is being complied with. And as I said very briefly over the page there on page 35, the decision making of the authority is and of its service is engaged in at all sorts of different levels, but externally to the authority itself, we also have an internal audit section, which is Carmarthen County Council coming in internally auditing the work of the authority itself, and also reporting that through, in particular, the Performance Audit and Scrutiny Committee, but also to the full fire authority itself. And over the page there, page 36, generally, most of the issues that were flagged up are reasonable or high level of assurance, moving on into reasonable and limited. Only one low level of insurance, and that is being fully addressed by the relevant officers in making their feedback to the various committees. And also the overall assessment of the internal audit is that at the bottom of page 86 there, it's my opinion that the authority is a reasonable control environment in operation, which in view of the difficult financial times that we live in, I think is a reasonable observation in its own right. It'd be difficult to have an absolutely clean sheet, but nevertheless, we will be working towards that, and hopefully that can be delivered in the not too distant future. And then sitting above it all, then outside the authority is the external auditors, Audit Wales, which not only audit the financial transactions of the authority itself, but also look at bigger picture stuff, in particular at the bottom of page 37 there, where they did a review published in September of 2024, looking at the governance of the fire authority itself. And in my view, the general feedback from that was good and positive. In particular, I think I'll come on to a minute, the good practice in relation to training and development, but there were some issues raised, namely probably at the behest of the Welsh Government, if I'm speaking candidly, and that is now leading us, or possibly leading us, into a further review of governance of the fire authority itself, not least because of the difficulties experienced in South Wales Fire Authority. But nevertheless, I would like to think that we are robustly placed in order to meet any challenges that come the way of the fire authority and fire service. And again, I would launch an observation which you might wish to expand upon, is that it's very easy to say, well, something perhaps might be improved in particular ways. It's very difficult to actually identify the way in which it can be done, which actually stands up to effective scrutiny. To use a well-known phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think the discharge of the governance of the fire authority generally, certainly in Mid and West Wales, has been effective in the recent past, and hopefully that will continue to be the case. Just moving on, then you've got the executive leadership team looking at the governance of the authority and the way in which it discharges its duties there. And again, we'll be working not only with the Welsh Government itself, but also with the Chief Fire Rescue Advisor, trying to make sure as far as possible that the work of the fire service is fit for purpose and carrying out the objectives of the authority as well. I think then over the page you've got on page 40 onwards, which is possibly where Councillor Freegat has raised some issues there, where we're looking at outstanding issues from previous years. So I won't go through those individually. I think there may be officers around the table who perhaps will be able to give more specific advice as to where we are on those particular issues. The only one I'd really flag up as potentially difficult is page 45 there with ICT cybersecurity. I think that is an issue that's going to be affecting UK government, Welsh Government, your own constituent authorities, but also the fire authority itself. And that is something I think we will ignore at our peril. We need to be ensured to make sure that that is safeguarded at all times. And then finally, on page 47, you've got a statement there saying that both myself and Sarah, the Section 151 officer, and myself, the monitoring officer, have looked at the governance arrangements with the fire authority, and in our view is satisfactory, and that we've put that together in the governance statement itself. But at the end of it, and hopefully members will be comforted by this, we then would ask yourself and the Chief Fire Officer to actually physically sign up to the statement that we feel the improvements are there, but any improvements that are made will be implemented as part of the next annual review. So that's the annual governance statement there, 2024. Happy to take any queries, and hopefully at the end of that, the authority will see fit then to approve it, and you can then sign it with the Chief Fire Officer.
Grateful, thank you, Monitoring Officer, for that very thorough and detailed walkthrough as part of the government statement. Councillor Freegat, do you wish to come back on the back of your question and the answers provided?
Yes, please. For the one on page 36 with the reports, I just wondered what the dates were. So the one that we were, the number one where we had a low report, was that the last report, or was it earlier on? And if we have any low and limited reports, I'm just assuming that all those recommendations go straight to the audit committee, do they? I don't sit on audit, so I was just wondering, just making sure that they do, any recommendations do go to the audit committee, because there's no mention. I'm just wondering now, because I've read that, what the 5 recommendations were, but I'm assuming that they went to the audit committee. So could you just clarify that? I do have another question on page 42. Thanks,
Yeah,
David.
certainly, Councillor Vigo. Firstly, clarify, we don't have an audit committee as such. I think it's past, so fills that role within the fire authority, but someone who's much more qualified to comment on that is Sarah. So I think Sarah will be able to come back to you and give you chapter and verse on that particular issue.
Thank you, Councillor Frigard. The reports that relate here are all reports that were received during the 24-25 financial year, and all of the reports were presented to the Performance Audit and Scrutiny Committee, along with the recommendations, the level of the assurance, etc. The low report that was referred to within this, within the Head of Internal Audits report, was for the management and use of service vehicles. It was a report that was concluded towards the, it was a 23-24 report, concluded at the beginning of 24-25. And management and use of service vehicles has gone into the internal audit plan for 25-26 as a follow-up to make sure that the recommendations within there have been progressed. Off the top of my head, a lot of the recommendations related to the actual procedure, and a whole new procedure has been written, and what we had to do was to make sure that that procedure was embedded before we went back to re-audit it, but that has been progressed. Does that help at all?
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, that's provided clarity on that. I do have one other question on page 42 about the Culture and Inclusion Working Group. It's got there that we're going to continue to progress and provide updates to the Welsh Government. Now, it's there twice there about the Welsh Government, but I'm once again presuming that the committees are going to have regular updates on this as well.
Yes,
Members.
yes, members will, through PASC, quarterly updates on that, and obviously the chairs now asked for a full presentation in September. We're happy to report in, into Fire Authority as often as we possibly can, whether through a formal presentation or through an update report as well. But it does come through PASC on a quarterly basis in terms of where we're at in the cultural journey. And as you say, Councillor Frigard, yeah, we report back into Welsh Government also on a formal basis as well.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, and I do welcome this seminar. I think that's a really good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shannon. Councillor Kerry.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick query. I'm on page 39, and the senior services leadership team, the key focus areas for 25-26 include the internal and external audit recommendations, and then we go on to last year's AGS, and there's some notation for both internal and external recommendations. But then we go on to the action plan, and it's not mentioned there. I'm just asking, should it actually be on the 25-26 action plan? Because it's an ongoing thing, isn't it?
And that's a really good point, actually. Thank you, Councillor, for picking that up. And yes, we will put that back in. What I can say with the annual governance statement is it has been submitted to Audit Wales alongside the statement of accounts, which is the next agenda item, so right way around this time. And we will receive feedback on it. And what will happen is that any updates with regard to the annual governance statement will be made and resubmitted, represented to the Fire Authority after they've been audited. So if there are any amendments, we will be able to sign them again at that point. So we will include it. Thank you for picking that up.
Grateful, Councillor Kim, for that very valid point. And are there any other questions or observations? Mindful, I expect that most of the aspects reported here as far as the annual governance statement is basically a collective of what is discussed on a regular basis in past anyway. It should be, because that's what it says. If there are no further questions, we will refer back to, I thank all those involved in putting a very extensive document together, the monitoring officer for his very detailed presentation. We now move back to the recommendation on page 3, which is to approve the annual government statement for signature by myself and the Chief Fire Officer, inclusion in the statement of accounts, which we will note shortly in the next item. Somebody move to that effect, please. You move by Councillor Kim, seconded by Councillor Edwin. All those in favour of moving to that effect? Grateful. Any against? No dissenting hands or abstentions. That means it's been approved. Thank you once again. That takes us on, therefore, to the presentation by Sarah Mansbridge of the unaudited statement of accounts for 24-25. In your hands, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Chair. Members will be familiar with this both from previous presentations in the Fire Authority and in your own constituent authorities as well. So it is a requirement of the accounts and audit regulations that every authority prepares statement of accounts, and the date for doing that is by the 31st of May of the financial, immediately after the financial year in question. So the accounts in front of you today are for the 24-25 accounts, and they're as at the 31st of March 2025. That is the statutory deadline. There is also a statutory deadline with regard to auditing accounts, and that is actually the 31st of July, and that is the statutory deadline. However, I'm sure you're all aware that there have been backlogs with regard to auditing accounts, and Audit Wales last year, in correspondence with Welsh Government, agreed a new timeline for auditing of accounts. And the actual agreed deadline for auditing of these accounts now is 31st of October 2025, not as in regulation, which is the 31st of July 2025. That being said, the accounts and audit regulations have not been amended, so therefore we will have to publish a notice if the accounts are not audited by the 31st of July. And that's all in hand, and we can speak regularly with Audit Wales with regard to that. And that's all highlighted in the Covering report. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you straight through to the appendix, which is the actual statement of account. And if it's okay with members, because of the way that mine is printed off, I'm going to refer to the little numbers. Is that okay with members?
Yes, fine.
Great, thank you very much. So, I'm sure members have read it all. If you haven't read it all, could I please encourage you to read the narrative report, which is set out on pages 3 to 12. This provides the context of the 24-25 accounts and highlights the most relevant of the information that you require. What it does do is these are the financial accounts, and the financial accounts are prepared in accordance with accounting code of practice. And they do include entries which you would not normally see in your management accounts, which are received by the Resource Management Committee on a quarterly basis. So some of the figures in here may not look familiar, but what I can assure you is that a full reconciliation has been done between the financial accounts and the management accounts that are received throughout the year in the Resources Management Committee. Bottom line that you see on page 6 of the accounts there in the narrative. So on page 6, you've got a summary of the financial year, and there's a table there that shows you the surplus or deficit for the year. And what you will see is after all the adjustments have been made to the accounts, after appropriations to reserve, there was a surplus of 184,000. And that 184,000 has been appropriated to our general fund balance. In the narrative above that table, in the second paragraph, you'll see that there is a summary, and it is a very high level summary of what's happened during the financial year. So you'll see in the table that the expenditure, there was a saving there of 1.9 million, which was just 3% of our budget. And the majority of that is linked to savings on operational staff, savings on support staff, and includes 614,000, which relates to a credit from the filing charges. These are all things that have been highlighted to members throughout the year. And offset against that, there's also the increase for on-call, which has come about through the pay award in 24-25, which introduced new bands. Capital financing charges there includes an appropriation to the capital fund, but there is also a pressure within the budget, within that capital financing charges, which related to higher interest costs. And then you'll also see, with regard to recharge costs, investments, interest and grants, that there was an additional income of 769,000 that was received in the year, and 320,000 of that related to a grant from Welsh Government for pay pressures, which we were not expecting. Page 7 of the statement of account shows the breakdown of our budget and the levy that we've received from each of your constituent authorities. So the actual full budget, the levy was 68.555 million, and you can see there the breakdown, and that levy is based on proportion of your based on population. And what you'll also see there beneath that table is one on revenue sources of funding. And it's abundantly clear from that table that the majority of our resources come from our levy contributions, and there is very little outside of that. On page 8 of the statement, you will see a breakdown of capital expenditure during the year. And as reported to members throughout the year, capital programme had paused, and the reason behind that was with regard to the community risk management plan, where a decision was made that investment would be paused in our fleet replacement programme, and also with regard to investment in property, where only essential maintenance has been undertaken, whilst we consider the outcomes of the consultation exercise and where we need to align our resources going forward. With regard to capital borrowing, at the page at the bottom of page 8, you'll see there that the total principal outstanding was just under £31 million. You then have a section on treasury management that sets out your capital financing requirement, and you'll see there a table on page 9. The capital finance requirement was just under 38 million, and the actual external debt there was just under 33 million. So in actual fact, we were underborrowed by 5 million. And that underborrowing has been financed by our reserves and by the cash that we've got in the bank. You've got a section there on the pensions, and I'll come on to those later on when we come to the note. But we have 2 pension schemes. We have the firefighter pension scheme, and we have the local government pension scheme. On page 10, we give an overview there of the impact of the current economic climate. And if I can just sort of give you a summary of that, the risks are still there. The inflation, which is fluctuating, pay awards, and the cost of borrowing are still impacting us. We also have a section there on page 11 with regard to strategy and resource allocation. And to summarise that is to say that our medium-term financial strategy and our community risk management plan 2040, it is the alignment of those two to make sure that moving forward those are aligned and we have the resources to deliver on our improvement and wellbeing objectives. Okay, so on page 13 there's a statement of responsibilities, and I've certified these statement of accounts, this draft statement of accounts as at the 29th of May, and submitted it to Audit Wales for auditing as a true and fair view of the position for 24-25. Once the accounts have been audited, we will insert the auditor's opinion. Core statements of accounts will be found on pages 18, 19 and out to 22. So if you look at these, you've got your expenditure and funding analysis, which gives you an overview there of how our balances have changed. So how our reserves have changed, our general fund balance has changed. We've got a comprehensive income an expenditure statement which tells you how much has been spent on the provision of fire services, etc. And if you look at page 21 of the balance sheet and you go through and you compare the 2 financial years and you look at what happened in 23, 24, 24, 25, this is the position at the 31st of March. If you go down and you can compare the balances one against each other, you'll see that not very much has changed from one financial year to the next year. The big change in our balance sheet is that the liability for the pension schemes is reduced by approximately 40 million, and that's a big change within the balance sheet. Right, I'm now going to take you through the disclosure notes. So the first disclosure note is the accounting policies. I would be really pleased to know I'm not going to take you through every accounting policy, but I will highlight that policy 13 is the only one that has significantly changed in year, and that is because of the change of the accounting standard. Okay, so that regards to leases. If you happen to know, I'm just going to flip through now to note 4, which is on page 35. We are asked to bring this to members' attention because this is the one note, particularly, which highlights where things are based on estimates. And they talk about material estimates and the word significant as well. So what they're actually saying, what the code is saying, is you as members need to be aware of anything in these accounts that are based on estimates, which could change at a later date. And the two things that could change for us, as most authorities, are the calculation of depreciation on our property, plant and equipment. It isn't real money. It's based on how the asset life of our property, the asset life of our vehicles, etc. And what it's actually saying is if we don't continue to invest in our assets, then potentially the life of those assets could reduce, and there could be a significant change in the depreciation charge we make in our accounts. And I'm required to bring that to your attention. And the other one I need to bring to your attention is with regard to pension liability. And again, pension liability is very much based on estimates. It's based on complex judgments for discount rate, projected future salaries, changes in retirement age and mortality rate. The information that we present in these accounts is prepared for us by an actuary. So that's the information that comes in here. And because of all of those complex judgments, again, I'm required to bring it to your attention. And like I said, that has moved by 40 million in the balance sheet this financial year. Okay. I won't take you through every note, but I will pick out the notes which I think will be of interest to members. Obviously, if you've got any queries on any of the other notes, quite happy to go through them. If you look at note 7, expenditure and increment analysed by nature, and go through that, it's broken down over categories of costs. So you've got your employee costs, support services, etc. And again, if you look at that side by side and you look at the comparison, you can see that they are comparable year on year. So that's all to the good. The next note that I'm sure members will be interested in is note 9, which is the usable reserves. So for the members who've been on the authority for a number of years, you will know that our financial reserve position has significantly increased over the last 4 to 5 years. And it was sitting at the beginning of the year at 6.116 million, which included 2 million in our general fund balance, which was approximately 3% of our revenue budget, and 4.116 for year-marked reserves. And these are the reserves which are satisfied for specific purposes. And those purposes are, the narrative for those is detailed on page 42. And what you'll see this year is that we have transferred into reserves the sum of 3.273 million, which aligns with the surplus, with the underspend that we had on expenditure and the excess income that we received. And that has been appropriated into reserves, much of it for specific purposes. So within the capital fund, within that, we had a budgeted appropriation of over 900,000, and that was from the capital financing charges. But we've also appropriated into there money for projects which we were committed to at the end of the financial year. Same with the fundraising and miscellaneous reserves. We have the number of outstanding commitments at the end of the financial years. For work streams which haven't been completed, and we now need to set that money aside to spend it when those projects come to fruition. Within the software and communication reserve, we appropriate the filing money, the 614,000, to set that aside to help us to deliver on the emergency services network, which is on the horizon. But also there is a very slim possibility that that money may still need to be repaid to MAWW. They've exhausted all of their appeals within the UK, but I believe there is still one avenue that's open to them with the European Human Rights Commission. I hope I said that correctly. And then what you will also see with the service reconfiguration, we've set aside there with transferred into that reserve just over £1 million, and that is particularly being set aside there to deal with the cultural journey and this progression of the community risk management plan and the improvement of wellbeing objectives within there. Okay, if we go on to property and plant and equipment note, which is note 12 on page 43, just to advise members that we again did a desktop exercise based on BCIS, which I can find it on here. I can't remember what it means. What it stands for is the Building Cost Information Services. We've done this desktop exercise as we're required to do to ensure that the balances that we hold on our balance sheet for our property are at the latest rates. And that was done for us by Carmarthenshire County Council. We'll now skip through a number of the notes, and I'll take you to note 23, which sets out officers' remuneration. So within the executive leadership team, this sets out the officers' remuneration, and there's been no changes to senior officer post holders during 24-25, and that note has been prepared there to the nearest pound as required by the Accounting Code of Practice. On page 57, you'll see a table which relates to officers' remuneration, which gives you the number of employees in bands. Now, it looks like we've got more people receiving higher salaries. What's happened with this note over the years is that the bands have not been reviewed. So whenever salaries have gone up year in, year out, we've had a pay award, the bands within the Civil Code have stayed the same. So this note never reads very favourably. With regard to external audit costs, note 24, the cost of the audit is expected to be 80,000. Note 25 details the grant income. What you'll see there is that we applied just 174,000 for capital grants, and then for the revenue we applied and used 1.967 million of grants for revenue, and all of those have been passed through the comprehensive income and expenditure account. Note 26, which is on page 60, sets out the related parties. This covers the Welsh Government. It also covers members as well. And if there are any members that haven't done their declaration of interest, it's not too late. I'd ask you please to do that. If you could do that post play today, that would be great. It also sets out the transactions that we have with constituent authorities and Welsh Government and position with regard to joint operations. So this covers the Joint Public Service Centre for joint fire control and the arrangement that we have with South Wales Fire. So, note 29, which is pension schemes. There is a whole raft of information in here, and this information is provided by the actuaries. It's provided by the Government Actuary Department with regard to the firefighter pension scheme, and the actuaries for Mercer with regard to the local government pension scheme, and they provide all the information for us with regard to this. And again, this is the one that showed that the liabilities, particularly on the firefighter pension scheme, had reduced. and that's with regard to to a reduction for changes in financial assumptions. Okay, so that was the big movement with regard to that. And finally, I'll just highlight note 31 and note 32. One is contingent liability and one is contingent assets. This just highlights here things that haven't yet come to fruition. They may come to fruition. They're based on a future event that we don't know about. We don't know the timing. We don't know the actual value. But it's just a requirement that we highlight within the actual statement where there are potential future events which could impact the financial position of the authority. Okay, and I'm going to stop there with regard to the accounts. But before I do, I would just like to extend my thanks to Stephen Phillips, who's the head of finance. He is on the call, and to the team for yet again delivering the statement of accounts with a very tight statutory deadline. So if I can just extend my thanks to Stephen, thank you.
Grateful, Sarah. Can I also reiterate our thanks and appreciation to you, to Stephen as well, even though he's my cousin. Different school of mathematics, so he's in a far better position than I am. Thank you. We appreciate the hard work, the diligence that's being applied to allow us to read a very positive report in that regard. And you'd expect me to say, irrespective of whether it's in the chair or not, and having a £2.5 million surplus on the year is a very positive position. Whilst they are, most of that money has been earmarked for reserves for specific matters, it is a 2.5 million surplus and a 2.5 million deficit. But I also recognise that 600,000 of that is a somewhat of a win for as far as fire link is concerned. I understand that, but it could be very different in that regard. I think Councillor Kim wants to come in.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for the fact that these are hitting the deadlines, which are very tight, actually. From what auditors who don't seem to be able to match their own deadlines. But there we are. If I just go on to, I've just got a query on page 96 on employee costs, which have actually gone down by 930,000 between last year and this year. Now, given that there would be pay rises and various other additional costs on the employees that are held, have we got significant vacancy factors? Because that's a bit concerning, really, that our pool of people is actually reducing.
Yes, you're absolutely right there. And throughout 24-25, I reported into the Resource Management Committee that we did have vacancies within the operational side of the business, but we've had significant vacancies within the support staff and in particular within the ICT department. The good news is that there has been a recruitment campaign, a full-on recruitment campaign in the last couple of months. I'm not sure of the outcome of that, but that was where we were experiencing a number of vacancies and a significant underspend of nearly 700,000 within support staff.
Thank you, which should account for some of the actual money into reserves really for that year.
Which is normal practice in a lot of the public sector these days, sadly. Chief Fire Officer.
Yeah, just highlight ICT is a particular area of concern, I'm afraid, in terms of the remuneration that individual skilled and talented individuals can get in other organisations. ICT permeates everything, as you can imagine. And whilst we feel we are competitive in a public sector sense, in a private sector sense, we are certainly not. And we do find it a challenge to recruit and to retain people in the ICT world. So we are looking at options. You know, we have we are out at the moment, and we have a number of actually interviews being conducted today and over the next week or two. If we are unable, because this has been an ongoing issue for some time, if we are unable to recruit those, we will have to look at alternatives, potentially outsourcing parts of the ICT department which will probably cost more, right? That's just the nature of it. But it is an area of concern, not only in terms of managing day-to-day business, but also that cyber security threat that all organisations operate under as well. So, we need to keep ourselves safe. We need to drive things forward. If I can bring it back to the culture report as well. The work we've got going on in terms of digitisation and being fit for purpose going forward, getting away from some of our paper-based systems and perhaps our more sort of antiquated systems into us. It takes investment, takes skills within the service. So it is a challenge for us. I know Madrid is all over it and trying to address it, but it is something we will have to perhaps change tack on going forward to ensure that we are robust and resilient in that area. Right, Jim?
We've seen it's been so evident recently in the headlines, isn't it? What's happening in the commercial world, your Max Spencers of this world, and it just goes to show how in demand refined and good skills are in ICT world. Very competitive. So good one.
Yeah, just exploring the unknown really, and something which I've been uncomfortable with since Westminster made a budget decision in relation to national insurance contributions, obviously in the press at the moment, because Mr. Drayford is now suggesting that the shortfall will come from reserves. I'm just wondering, do you have any further knowledge? Do you think there's going to be a sting in the tail for local authorities over this, which could lead them to giving us a sting in the tail? Any further information on that?
No, I haven't got any further information. My understanding is that the shortfall from central government, and they're going to make up some of the difference with reserves from Welsh Government, which will equate to approximately 85% of the national insurance contribution increase. So there is 15% shortfall there. With regard to the fire authority, we've included the full impact of the changes to the employer's national insurance contribution in the levy. So it is your constituent authorities which will feel the pain of that national insurance from us. Okay.
That pain may translate out in difficult discussions and negotiations in the next financial year, but that's not for today. Any further questions, anybody, or observations on what has been a very thorough and detailed report and a huge amount of work to meet deadlines and everything else? Linda.
Apologies for being a bit late, but I think I may have been the guinea pig in getting the tablet to work because there were a few glitches and licensing issues. But I think they're all sort of working there. Yeah, I was going to mention the thing about the NI contributions because I understood that there was a 70 million shortfall, and then 36 million pounds has been found from Welsh Government. So the shortfall then was 34 million. And that's got to be found really by the public sector employers in Wales. And that's quite a substantial sort of sting in the tail, really. And obviously now you'll need to wait for that probably to feed through to find how much we may have to pay. But that is obviously between everyone, but it's still quite a bit of money.
Not to mention the third sector that we so depend on these days as well. There's no backfill whatsoever. Okay, grateful for those observations. If there are no further, and I see no hands on screen, we reflect back. And again, I thank Sarah and the team, and Stephen as well, for delivering a balanced budget, a surplus budget in that regard, but also a thorough, detailed context behind it. We move to the recommendation. Consider and note the audited statement of accounts for 24-25. Somebody move, please. You moved and seconded by Elwyn and Elwyn. There's two Elwyns now in the room. All in favour, please show. Any against for some reason? No, and no abstentions. That is an unanimous decision of noting the unaudited statement of accounts. Many thanks. Thank you. We now move on to, before we enter the next item, because of its sensitivity, we need, as members of the public, members of the committee need to consider exclusion of press and public for the reasons that pursuant to section 100A for the Local Government Act 72 that the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the reason that they were present. It is likely that there will be disclosures to them of exempt information within the description of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 72, namely paragraph 12, information relating to a particular individual. Paragraph 14, information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. And therefore, I therefore put it to the authority that we should have considered going in the private session to exclude the press and public the issue of what I have read to you. Somebody moved to that effect. He moved by Elwyn and seconded by Edwin. All in favour of doing that, please? Seems I have majority. Any against? If not, it will be unanimous. Then against, it is unanimous. We now go into private session. Alan? We safe in that regard?
Yes.
Everybody in the room